Dubai's running out of time, gentlemen. Let's move.
I can't really say that I understand it, but the market for realistic or semi-realistic military shooters, especially on the consoles, is gigantic, of course led by Call of Duty. But nonetheless, we see more and more games in this genre, and Spec Ops: The Line is the newest one, which, at least on paper, tries to set itself apart with a huge focus on story.
Yes. It doesn't take long until you realize that this thing is pretty much one gigantic homage to Apocalypse Now and Heart of Darkness, to the point where one of the central characters is even named after the writer of Heart of Darkness. But yeah, military shooter. Not so much in the vein of Call of Duty, actually.
Okay.
A lot more like Gears of War.
Yeah, it's
a lot like Gears of War.
It's third person. But let's start out with the story though, because that seems to be the focus on just about everything we hear about the game.
The game takes place in Dubai. 6 months after the biggest sandstorm in the history of the world basically has eaten the city. And there's the storm wall around the city, so nobody can really get in contact. But you know there's some people in there. This guy, John Conrad, took his force out of Afghanistan and then into Dubai to help out, try to save people. All contact has been lost until suddenly there's a distress call from him. That's like really glitchy and difficult to decipher. So you and your band of merry men is sent in to sort of investigate and figure out, what the hell is going on. And that's how it starts out. And as you arrive, very quickly you realize that something is deeply wrong here. The civilian populace is fighting the soldiers, and everybody seems to have gone insane.
But that, at least to me, sounds really cool. Also because, as you said, it's Heart of Darkness, it's Apocalypse Now, and it's kind of cool to make a mystery out of something from the real world. And that was actually one of my first things that was really interesting about the game. Dubai as a background. Just on paper at least, seems like a really good idea.
Yeah, it's a really cool place, and because there's been this sandstorm, you have this sort of destroyed. It's not post-apocalyptic, but it's a sort of destroyed civilization, what you might call it. And because there's so much sand, they use that for some pretty cool mechanics. To go places like you're in a high-rise building or whatever with glass facades, and the sand is piled up to mountains, all up, covering the windows. So if you shoot out the windows, the sand will pour in and kill whoever's in the way. But other than that, it's pretty much a fairly standard shooter. A good one, but a fairly standard one.
But the story, is it any good? Is it enough to keep you going?
Oh yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. And it's one of those game stories that's difficult to talk about because you don't want to spoil anything. Crazy stuff happens.
Okay.
To the point where, I think story-wise the game does some things that very few games have attempted before. It plays with your preconceptions about what a game is, pretty much about what to do in an action game, and who you are as a character in an action game. And I'll try not to say more than that. It is one of those things I won't even name examples because that would be spoiling stuff. But story-wise, I really think this game is going where very few people have gone before. In some areas where nobody has gone before, I think.
Okay.
At least not in usual shooty action games.
And that leads us directly into my next point. You mentioned Gears of War, and from everything I've seen of the game, it looks like a game that, at least when it comes to game mechanics, just more or less copies everything from Gears of War.
There's no active reload and there's no chainsaw bayonet. But it is very much gameplay-wise cut from the same
cloth,
whatever, as Gears of War is. I don't mind. It's really well executed, I think.
But does the two parts gel together?
They do. They do actually pretty well. A lot of the what you might say, the seminal points in the story are carried through the gameplay. Okay. Like when you have to make some rather meaningful choices during the game, and it's not like it isn't the type like Uncharted where the action stops every other moment to progress the story. The story progresses through the action, which is cool.
Okay, so for a game of this genre, you can't really do without a big, huge multiplayer today. It seems, but tackling and focusing so much on single player, has that meant that the multiplayer is lacking?
The multiplayer is pretty standard. I haven't had a chance to probably try out multiplayer yet because we got a early copy debug version of the game and nobody else has it, so there's nobody online to play with. But it has multiplayer that's what you might expect from multiplayer, with all the usual game types. Yep. It has that cool blow out a window, drown people in sand mechanic and other levels as well. But I think what should draw people to this is the storyline in the single player, because that is definitely something that's worth experiencing.
So it seems like it's quite a surprise, because this was a game that was delayed a lot of times, and maybe even changed developer, or at least there was some trouble there. But now it's out, or it's soon to be out, and it's worth the wait.
Oh yeah, I definitely say so. I don't know the details of the development, but yes, it's been underway a long time. But it doesn't seem like a game that should have been out like 4 years ago or anything. It doesn't seem like it's been hindered or like they've stumbled during the development. It feels very solid, very polished, very well thought out, and like I said, brilliant story.
Son of a bitch!